中瑙恢复大使级外交关系。他称这是一个历史性的时刻，坚持一个中国原则。他说，瑙鲁将和中国并肩前行。瑙鲁外长安格明接受高端访谈独家专访，敬请收看。
关注国际焦点，洞察世界风云。大家好，欢迎来到本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵。1月24号，中国同瑙鲁在北京签署《中华人民共和国和瑙鲁共和国关于恢复外交关系的联合公报》，即日起两国恢复大使级外交关系。在这个决定宣布的1个小时之后，我们在钓鱼台国宾馆采访签署该公报的瑙鲁外交部长安格明。那么，瑙鲁是一个怎样的国家？它为何会做出这样的决定？与中国复交对于两国发展和地区合作又意味着什么呢？今天我们一起在对话中寻找答案。
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you so much for joining us here today on Leaders Talk. Well, first thing first, I gotta say congratulations, because just before this interview, China and Nauru jointly resumed the diplomatic relations, marking a significant milestone on track of bilateral relations. So how do you feel about this moment, and what's your understanding of the significance of this decision?
My understanding of this moment is it is a historic moment. It is a moment that will catapult Nauru into a stronger development strategy. For us, nothing matters more than our country and our people. And joining China and recognizing the One China principle was not an instantaneous decision. It was a decision that was considered. It was a decision that saw its fruition in the current government, but saw its genesis much earlier on. We see it, as the comments I've made earlier this morning, as a shoulder-to-shoulder movement forward with Nauru and China.
Well, one of the key messages about this move is that Nauru recognizes One China principle and adopts the UNGA 2758 resolution in recognizing there is but one China in the world.
Yes.
So how do you understand the One China principle?
My understanding of the One China principle is that anything that deals with the One China principle, in all our dealings with China and the rest of the world that touches on China, that will be at the forefront of our foreign policy, is the One China principle.
How does the Nauru government plan to adhere to the One China principle?
Adhering to the One China principle is to ensure that all that we do, whenever it touches China, complies with the One China principle. This is the relationship. Even though it's new, the welcoming gesture of China made us feel as we were an old friend. Not just an old friend of 10 years, 20 years, say like an old friend of 100 years, 200 years.
Well, on January the 15th, the Nauru government announced that it recognizes the One China principle and severed its so-called diplomatic relations with Taiwan. Well, Mr. Foreign Minister, as you just mentioned, this is not a decision made by a single person, but a collective decision, a motion that was approved and passed by the Parliament of Nauru. So what are the rationale behind such a decision?
Well, you've done your research quite well. And like I said, it was a decision not instantaneous. It's in its making. It was a decision that has been steadily coming along. Now, the rationale behind it, of course, is about Nauru's development strategy. No developing country wants to be left behind. China, stepping in, second biggest economy. It is branching out in international aid, unprecedented in the last 100 years. Why not come on board? Why not partner with China in Nauru? I mean, we've got a big Chinese population in Nauru. We've got a lot of imports coming in from China into Nauru. We've got a Chinese company building our ports. We've got a Chinese company, same Chinese company, helping establish our cable link to our solar panels to help with renewable energy. So all of that was already happening on island.
What were the the politicians, they were thinking about, restoring diplomatic relations with China? And also, I believe that you've been talking to your people since this decision was made. What are their response like?
The decision within Cabinet and Caucus was very strong. There was robust discussions, there was frank discussions, and we looked at overall the picture of what it means for Nauru. The decision was made at the executive level, and we recognized the One China policy. To reassure the Nauruan people, we took it to Parliament the next day. That Parliament sitting basically really had nothing but the discussion and the debate on the recognition of the One China principle by the government of Nauru. The motion was put on the table or on the floor by His Excellency the President of Nauru, David Ayang. I seconded the motion and debate ensued. But the amazing part of that story was that when a division was called in Parliament and those who were asked to support the motion were asked to stand, every single member of Parliament stood. Shows the absolute bilateral unity of Parliament in supporting the recognition of the One China principle. My resolve in following the One China principle was absolutely stout, strong, set in concrete. But then I experienced China. This little 2-3 days I experienced Guangdong.
And you said you were amazed.
I was blown away by the economy, the resilience, the strength, the fortitude, the warmness of the Chinese people, its country.
Well, in recent years, we've seen other countries choosing to cut ties with Taiwan and established or restore diplomatic relations with China. Many believe that this shows the One China principle is where the global opinion trends and the arc of history bends. So what's your take on this trend?
Well, I mean, I think we're the number in
183rd.
183rd
Yes.
country to have recognized the One China principle. It's the trend of the world, isn't it? It's unavoidable. This is the right side of history. We have a saying back home where one drop of water creates an ocean in a lifetime. And I said, the ocean will be the gavel, like a judge, hitting to judge that Nauru stands on the right side of history.
太平洋岛国瑙鲁，全称瑙鲁共和国，位于中太平洋赤道以南约42公里处，由一个独立的珊瑚礁岛及周边海域构成。瑙鲁陆地面积21.1平方公里，海洋专属经济区面积32万平方公里。中国与瑙鲁相距遥远，随着中瑙复交，两国民众也渴望加深相互了解。
Thank you, China, for helping us with our construction and for being our friend. And I want to see China. I want to experience China.
China is the best. I love China. I love that we are alliance with China. You know, when they say, whatever impossible, China gonna make it possible.
Today, a few minutes after the diplomatic relations between the two countries was restored, China Media Group set up an overseas bureau in Yaran district of Nauru.
Congratulations.
Nauru. So thank you so much. And also, China Media Group has signed an MOU with the Nauru Media Bureau. Since the people of our two countries might not be very familiar with the culture and history of each other. So what role do you think media could play in that regard? And Mr. Foreign Minister, what is your vision on media cooperation moving forward?
Overall, media has a role to play. I mean, to tell you the truth, the Chinese media I read, I think, last week, looked at Nauru and said, a pearl in the Pacific. No one has ever described us as that. Thank you for that. Because it's home. For us, it's home, regardless of its state, regardless of its size, regardless of what happens here and there. It's home. It's where your heart is warmed. It's where you're most at ease. It's home. And that's the role media plays. And I reiterate again, that's what happened to myself and my delegation coming here. It was like, they're saying home away from home.
Actually, China Media Group has also sent a special reporting team in Nauru to cover extensive stories there. And I asked my colleagues about their impression of the country and they told me that they were really impressed by the unspoiled natural beauty and the warm hospitality of local people. I think this is what you have felt here. So, Mr. Foreign Minister, despite this, really remote distance, for our viewers who are now really curious about this country and might want to visit there someday in the
Please
future, what kind of unique charm and adventures can be expected, given that it's sometimes depicted as the pearl of the Pacific?
Well, we've got great seafood cuisine, great reef fishing. We've got historical sites that you can see, World War II sites that you can see, caves that you can visit, underwater caves that you can visit. One of the great things about traveling is that you get to understand the people and the country firsthand. I did not understand, I know of China. I know some of the Chinese people, but just a small fraction of what we have in Nauru. Me coming here absolutely changed my perception. And that's what it is. So come to Nauru, check it out. Maybe you can introduce some new cooking techniques to our Chinese restaurants in Nauru.
I want to ask that because that's what actually my colleague shared with me, surprises me a lot, because Nauru is like thousands of miles away from China, but my colleagues told me there are Chinese restaurants with authentic Chinese food there. I'm really curious to know, have you ever tried these restaurants, and is there Chinese food that you particularly love?
Well, we all grew up with our version of Chinese food. Growing up in Nauru, pre-independence, I've got vivid memories of Chinese hawkers in like carts selling food. I mean, I was introduced to wonton in Nauru. I was introduced to barbecued pork in Nauru. I was introduced to Chinese steamed buns in Nauru. I was introduced to use of a chopstick. Sometimes I think the first eating implement I used before a spoon or a knife and fork was a chopstick.
So you can use it pretty well.
Use it pretty well.
And you just mentioned about the different perception. What is the thing that overwhelmed you the most about China?
How advanced it is.
You didn't expect that?
I did not expect that. I couldn't believe we went to a waste power plant in Shenzhen where they use rubbish, burn it, and use it to generate power. And I think I was asking them the size of the generator. I think they said something like 65 megawatts, which is, I can run Nauru for 100 years on one day. What's output it in? Blew my mind. I said, wow. And just to use waste. What country doesn't want to use waste in that manner? And then I saw what they're doing with at BYD.
Right, the electronic vehicle producer.
And the battery. And they told me they use phosphate in that battery. So, bang, we can supply you with the phosphate that you need in the battery. The technology blew my mind. Absolutely amazing. The advancement that China has made blew my mind.
After witnessing all those, what you have just described, do you have an understanding about China's path towards modernization?
Yes. It's fast, it's visionary, and it's very good.
近年来，中国同太平洋岛国通过共建“一带一路”倡议展开合作。中国参与建设多个太平洋岛国的重大工业生产项目、基础设施和民生工程。双方的合作不仅给当地民众带来了实实在在的利益，也在该地区起到了良好的示范作用。如今，中瑙复交也开启了两国合作的新篇章。
So during the joint press conference that just got concluded not long ago, you said we look forward to the practical cooperation that's going to happen between Nauru and China. So can you share with us here about what are some of the main areas do you particularly look forward to for both countries to collaborate?
One of the great things that China has is that it sees development partners as equal partners. China looks forward to assisting them with. So in these areas, we're looking at areas of fisheries. We are a small nation, land-wise, but we are a big ocean nation
Right.
with a very big EEZ that rivals the EEZ of other countries. And therefore, that's one area. One area of practical development also is our phosphate industry. China, especially with its global initiatives, we look forward to those practical benefits that will actually start happening on island.
And I believe that you might also have heard about China's Belt and Road Initiative, which was a very visionary initiative proposed by our President Xi Jinping in 2013 and has now gained global attention. And the Pacific Island countries, they are located at the southward extension of this.
South for us.
Indeed, and also have been actively involved in its development. So what is your understanding of this initiative, and does Nauru intend to join it in the future?
It will be my advice when I go back home to our president and to cabinet and caucus. What negative thing can you say about the BRI? Nothing. It is absolutely a positive initiative. When we debated this issue of the One China principle in Parliament, I used the BRI as an example.
What did you say about it?
Well, I basically said, well, let's take this initiative that was launched 10 years ago in China, the Belt and Road Initiative. And I gave this, basically because it's historic. It comes from the Silk Road. I've always been an admirer of history and a student of history. And seeing what the Silk Road did to all the economies, all the countries
Along the road.
Along the road. And those were basically the cities.
And as you said a bit earlier, that actually now some of the projects in Nauru are already contracted by Chinese companies, including the redevelopment of the Iwo Harbor, as well as the photobotanic system that you just mentioned. They're all taking shape in the country. So what kind of economic impact do you anticipate from those projects, and what kind of potential of collaboration did you look forward to?
Well, of course, the solar panels has a major economic impact. It'll affect the prices of electricity and utilities back in Nauru. They will, of course, drop by the implementation of more solar panels and more green energy into Nauru. The ports will be a game changer.
It is.
We'll be equal to other countries in the Pacific who have ports where ships can easily come in, fishing vessels can come in. Like other countries have established canneries and fish loining plants within that port area, we can do the same thing. Our fisheries people will be coming here shortly, and they're looking forward to establishing a fishing industry. As soon as the port's done, a fishing industry that will be able to feed into China.
Let's go back to the development in Nauru a little bit, because apart from its natural beauty, its geographical location has also made it highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And you have previously said that, quote unquote, here, we are at a watershed moment in the fight against climate change. So, Mr. Foreign Minister, what do you really mean by that? And what is the government's plan to increase the resilience in tackling those challenges?
I use the word watershed because basically that's what's happening. I'll give you an example. We never had problems with king tides. Never had problems with them. Now we have problems with them. We've never had tropical storms or tropical depressions that took the roof of houses and buildings. That has started happening in the last year. We've never had waves that can pick up a 10-ton rock like it was a marble and throw it into the Pacific Ocean. We have that now. We've had to relook how we do things in regards to climate change in Nauru. I've seen the green elements of what China is doing. And I welcome the experts to come, help us solve the problem. Help us mitigate, help us adapt. The dangers of climate change are real, is real. The UN General Secretary said the time to act is now. No, the time to act is maybe 5, 10 years, 20 years ago. But we can act quickly to be able to catch up what we lost in the last 20 years.
So, Minister Anjumia, let's talk a little bit about regional cooperation, because the cooperation between China and the Pacific Island countries have enjoyed long-lasting friendship, and also the cooperation between the two sides have been promoted in over 20 areas. So what impact do you think the enhancing ties between China and Nauru will help to contribute to strengthening the relations between China and those countries?
One of the discussions I had with the Foreign Minister of China's great assistance to the PIFs, I think it'll be strengthened much, much more with Nauru now being part of that, of the One China Principle group. I think the other countries who have not yet recognized the One China Principle should also, the other Pacific countries should also change allegiances and recognize the One China policy, because it'll be for their advantage, and then you will have a whole PIFs united under the One China Principle.
For those countries who haven't restored or established diplomatic relations in the Pacific area, what would be your advice to them?
Change.
Change for what?
Change. Change for the better. Change for the good. Change for your development. Change for your economic future. Change for the initiatives that China has instituted and initialized in other countries around the world. And one thing I have found with China is that they see you as an equal partner.
Indeed.
They don't see you as a junior. They don't see you as a senior. They see you as an equal partner. I've seen my treatment. I'm a foreign minister, but they've treated exactly every single foreign minister, from whether you're a big country or whether you're a small country, equally the same. Absolutely no disparity. And that's amazed me. But I guess that comes from a history of diplomacy that the Chinese people have got.
Well, during the meeting, Nauru has also expressed its support and have spoken highly about the concept, a community of shared future for mankind. So what's your take on it?
Well, first of all, one of the great things about the Chinese initiative in that area is about standing shoulder to shoulder, about treating everybody as equal. And I like that. I really, really like that. That tells one about the genuineness of how China wants to go forward with Nauru.
Well, Mr. Foreign Minister, you have visited Guangzhou this time. You came to Beijing, and then you're heading to Shanghai next.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. And you have said that you've seen firsthand China's incredible technological advances and also some of the other, incredible developments. What are some of the development lessons or experiences that you think are really inspirational to the development model of Nauru?
Having a vision that incorporates the whole nation, like the BRNI initiative, that propels a country forward. You must always have a vision. Without vision, the people perish. You must also look at what you have and work within those parameters. One cannot overstep their own boundary. We know we have limitation to land. We know we have limitation in regards to phosphate. We know we have a sustainable fisheries industry. We know we can do undersea mining. Let's work with those things. Let's enhance those elements that Nauru has. We won't be able to put a man into space, so take that out of the equation. But there are things that we can do that is within our grasp.
You are a big fan of history, and is there any part of the Chinese history that you have in-depth understanding or you particularly like?
Well, I like looking at the travels of those who have traveled into China and those who have traveled out of China around the world. I thought Marco Polo was the epitome of a traveler into China or out of China.
Right.
But then I came across another traveler. I can't remember his name, but I do know he was a Chinese.
Is it Zheng He?
I think so.
I think so
I
too.
think so. Over 20 to 30 years of traveling.
Right.
Had various families around the world because of his travels.
Right.
And introduced Chinese cuisine, Chinese culture in all his travels, even down to Southeast Asia. If he had just turned maybe a little bit this way, he would have hit Nauru. But no, instead he came. And of course now I'll be more involved in reading up on the history of China.
Actually, during this conversation, you just mentioned about Marco Polo, and your entire, what you have said in this interview, it really reminded me of something that Marco Polo has said. When people ask Marco Polo that whether what he has described or depicted in his book about China are true, and you know what he said? He said, what I have told you is not even as half as what I saw. Is that what you have felt?
That's exactly it. I would not even half, I would say a fraction. A fraction.
So seeing is believing, and we should have more people coming to China to really experience China, right?
Well, I'm going to go back home, and you'll have no better ambassador for traveling to China than myself.
So now you're the China ambassador.
For
the
come
honorary.
Visit, the honorary. Come visit China. Come see China. Come taste China. Come feel China. You'll be absolutely amazed.
Well, finally, Mr. Foreign Minister, as you also may know, that the Chinese New Year is fast approaching. We'll soon welcome the Year of Dragon.
Year of
So
Dragon,
here,
yes.
taking this opportunity, what kind of wishes would you like to extend to our viewers here in China?
Well, in regards to the Year of Dragon, I know how prosperous that is. How absolutely fantastic for that relationship to come just on the cusp of kicking off
Right.
the Chinese zodiac sign of the Year of the Dragon. And it'll be fantastic. Because, I mean, what more good omen can you want? I'm also born under the Year of the Snake.
I
And
know,
somebody-
it's the year after.
Yes, yes. So someone said to me, I'm the little dragon.
Yes, that makes sense.
That makes sense. So we look forward to the prosperity of the two countries going forward together.
So, Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great pleasure talking to you and listening to your insights about the resumption of diplomatic relations between China and Nauru and all those global issues as well. So, have a great stay here in China.
Thank you very much.
在刚刚的采访当中，我们听到了来自瑙鲁的声音，也感受到了他们的期待。中瑙两国虽然远隔重洋，且在很多方面不尽相同，但这并不妨碍双方在一个中国原则基础上开启友好合作。志同才能道合，凝心方能致远。我们也相信，在未来，两国将在平等相待、相互尊重、合作共赢、开放包容的基础上，开启前景广阔的合作新篇章。感谢您收看本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵，我们下期再会。